Hey guys, Dan here with Battlefield Curator. Do you have a Mannlicher M1895? Well, I'll tell you a little bit about my experiences and all the interesting things I learned when I got my first M95 about 3 years ago. Yes, and this is a very unique rifle. It was designed by Ferdinand Ritter von Mannlicher, and there's just so many things that are very interesting, I think, about this rifle that makes it very collectible, yet sometimes just very frustrating. And a lot of things, you just gotta get over it. I mean, when you think about it, it's very frustrating when you try to tell somebody about these rifles or talk to somebody and try to be serious about it, because you're literally saying Mannlicher, 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 Mannlicher. Yeah, so you're like, hey, can I see that M1895 Mannlicher? And they say, did you say Mannlicher? And it's like all the jokes come out. And if you've been in the gun world for a while, you've probably heard them all already. So anyways, of course, the first thing that you would notice that is very different about this rifle is that it is a straight pull bolt action design. That's right, you pull the bolt straight back and then push it straight forward to load another cartridge in there. But yeah, very unique design and takes a little getting used to, but I'd say it's really not that big of a turnoff for me. It is just really more of a cool thing to admire about this rifle. Alright, the other thing I wanted to mention about this rifle is that there's a lot of different variants that were made, and a lot of different conversions. Different countries did different things to them, and then there's a lot of fakes running around. What I mean by fake is supposedly in the 1990s, a bunch of the M95 /34 carbines were imported into the States with a bunch of fake Nazi markings on them. So you saw a lot of fake Waffen amps on the stock and on the metal, which totally ruins the historic value of these rifles. And it looked like some importers or exporters were just trying to make an extra buck selling these rifles off as being used by Nazi Germany. So yeah, now that we got the fake Nazi rifles out the way, let's get into some of the variants that are out there. You've got the M95 rifle in 8x50. You've got the M95/30 that was converted to 8x56. You've got the M95/30 carbine. You've got the M95 carbine, the M95 Stützen carbine. You've got the M95/34, you've got the M95/24, you've got the M95/31 that was done by Hungary. You've got the M95M, you've got the M95 Sniper. Oh yeah, and there's even a semi-auto converted M95, which you probably won't be able to find. And I think there's a few more out there, but either way, what I'm getting at is that there's so many variants out there. It's kind of a juicy thing if you're a collector and you're very intricate. If you like collecting Mosin Nagants for all the different types of variants out there, you might like getting into M95s. So yeah, there's a lot of variants out there. Just remember that you have some that were made by Steyr, some that were made in Budapest, some that were made by Brno in Czechoslovakia, and some have the Bulgarian crest, and some don't. So yeah, keep that in mind as well. And with these variants, it's kind of hard to tell the difference of some of them. You have to look at certain features, like what Bulgaria did, and what Hungary did, and what Austria did to these conversions, you know? So when you look at an M95/30, which a lot of these get labeled as M95/30s, a lot of them aren't. If you look at an M95/34, you're looking at a Bulgarian conversion where they marked the rear sight on both sides. You'd see a serial number on the right side, the shooter's right side of the buttstock, and then you'd also see serial numbers stamped on the front barrel lug, or you see them on the bolt especially, and then you'll see on some of the 95/34s, you'll see that sling swivel right there in the way of the handguard. That's pretty annoying. The other thing that gets frustrating is the ammo. You're looking at either 8x50 millimeter rimmed, which is kind of hard to find, and it's more collectible than the rifle, what I'm talking about. Now the ammo itself, good luck trying to find the 8x50 millimeter R ammo. It's pretty much unobtainium. Then when you look at the 8x56 millimeter rimmed, which is probably going to be more your conversions, anything that was converted is going to be taken 8x56 millimeter R. That ammo you can find, but you're probably going to be looking at anywhere around or more than $2 a round. Yes, it gets expensive. Oh yeah, and then the availability of this ammo, trying to find the ammo is probably going to be a little bit more difficult than just trying to find 8mm Mauser. And then speaking of 8mm Mauser, yeah, some of them were actually converted to 8mm Mauser, like your M95/24, your M95M. So yeah, you have that as well. There is a lot of surplus ammo floating around. They were made in Nazi Germany, and you could find them still in little boxes, but when it comes down to it, those are seen as more collectible. They once you use them, they're done. So yeah, and then you also have to figure out if your rifle actually takes 8x56. Now most of these that have been converted to 8x56R would have an S mark above and on top of the barrel shank up there. Now there are some that are not S marked and they still might be an 8x56. So just because you see one without an S doesn't mean that it is definitely going to be an 8x50. It might be a conversion, but just was never marked due to laziness or something. So another thing about the ammo is that when you go looking for them online or in stores, you have to realize that, hey, you're looking for 8x56R. It could be labeled 8x56 Hun. It could be labeled Steyr 8x56, or it could be labeled 8x56 Mannlicher. So a lot of the ammo cartridges manufacturers label these differently. Either way, you're going to be looking for 8x56R. So yeah, next is another frustrating thing here I find with these is that you might go to a local shop or something and you'll see an M95 carbine. And you get a little closer look, it's labeled M95 carbine and 8x50R, and then you look at it, you say, wait, this is an M95/34 Bulgarian. So, you tell the shop owner, hey, this is, an M95/34, it's been converted. And then the shop owner, and you start going over some things in history and maybe debating a little bit. So it could get a little frustrating trying to figure out the different models, and shop owners just try to, make money on these things sometimes. So, they might not be that knowledgeable on some of these. I've seen a few times where rifles, not just M95s, but other rifles just get mislabeled. And they turn out to be either really collectible or just way overpriced because somebody thinks they have something that's very unique, and it's really not. So one thing I do like about the M95s is when you take them to the range, they're a blast to shoot. You just pull that, it takes a little while getting used to that bolt, but once you start working it, you're getting really fast and consistent shots on target. At nighttime, the M95 conversions do have a pretty big muzzle blast. Hey, these rifles are fun. One thing that is a little frustrating though is that the clip only goes in one way. It doesn't go in a reversible way like a Carcano would. And something else that could be a little annoying is the rear sight. You have to flip it up when you go to the range, or else you're going to be shooting really high. That's because the rear sight, when the ladder is down, it's set to 500 meters. When you flip it up, there is a designation for 300 meters. So yeah, just remember to flip up the rear sight when you go to the ranges shooting at closer distances under 500 meters. I mean, come on, how many times do you actually go to a range that's over 500 meters? All right, so that is the issues that you would probably come across if you get into M95 rifles. Now, be forewarned, if you're not willing to do a lot of the research, I had to do a little extra digging. It's not like you can just go on Google and find a plethora of information that's going to be true. You'll find some old forums with false information. You'll find some things that contradict. You'll find information that's like 20 years old and could be true, and then you'll find something that was posted yesterday on a Facebook group that is completely false. So just do your research properly, get to know, some of the people in the Facebook groups that are really knowledgeable, and, learn the history about these rifles. I mean, these are very unique, and as a collector shooter, I like to take these to the range, and they're a blast to shoot, and they're so much fun And you just don't get that kind of experience out of some of the other rifles out there from this era. You got to think, you know, these were designed in World War I, and they were used again in World War II, but they were phased out because of their design. And then, you know, the standards was now, after World War II, was turning into semi-auto designs. So yeah, guys, let me know what you think in the comments about the M95 rifles. Well, what are your thoughts on them? You know, I think they're very unique and they're very fun to shoot. They can be a pain sometimes as a collector shooter owning them. But overall, I think it's worth it, you know. I think, you know, that's, you know, you try to dig up some of that history and it's challenging. And, you know, I said challenge accepted, you know, I'm doing this. So, yeah, if you like this kind of content, be sure to share it with your compadres. And also, don't forget to pulverize that like button and subscribe for the algorithms if you haven't. And as always, be sure to learn history and curate history. Make it a great day.